What is architecture? It's actually it's a fairly complex question. It sounds like a simple question, but it is quite complex. I think one of the few things that contemporary society is preoccupied with is finding architectures suitable to our society. So architecture in many ways is the reading of political systems and society translated into physical form and shape, including everything that is subtle, including everything that is related to its surroundings, its context, its history, and trying to give physical shape, form, and shaping of volumes and interior spaces related to the typologies of our current social situation. So if you take that into account, architecture is the tool to create better societies, continuously develop the society per se in order to make people aware of themselves in the world on an environmentally sustainable level, on a socially sustainable level, on an economic sustainable level, and try to develop themselves to become better people, better humans through physical surroundings. I know it sounds a little dramatic, but I think we need to be this dramatic because we see our behavior changing over time related to the spaces we actually inhabit. So as a result, we're not better than the things we are actually building for ourselves. So that means architecture really, in the end, is this particular tool that actually drives societies forward. Physical space, exterior, interior. So I think that would be my first sort of go at what architecture is. On the other hand, you could say it's coming also from a humanistic perspective, development from the caves up until today, where you move away from the shelter. And you actually generate cultural space, say, performance spaces for people communicating with others, film, positioning of yourself. Yes, so again, maybe the simplest version of it is the sort of definition of the tool architecture is what architecture is about, the continuous reinvention of this tool.
And so you already answered more or less the second question, what architecture can do?
Well, you know, architecture is what it can do, in a way, and there is not much difference in the relationship between architecture as a tool, because that actually then describes how you change societies. And I think after the lecture from Briggs yesterday, also you can see very clearly that there is a conscious tendency in architecture to not revolt, but actually to be mind-driven. And once architecture is mind-driven, it can do whatever it wants to do. So in a way, it's like moving mountains, you could say. But yes, architecture can do whatever it wants to do, and whatever we, if we have the right angle, if we look at it in the proper manner, want it to do.
And how do you position yourself in the discourse of architecture?
Well, we have, since our very beginning, of course, been very strongly addicted to the reinvention of particular architectures related to specific places. Everything from form follows environment, relationships to historical contextual situations. Although we are coming from a point of view where the interpretation of the place is not necessarily only scientific, but it also is dealing with things like instinct or reflex. But you could also have a notion that the collaborative manner of architecture today is probably the solution per se. And that probably leads also into the fourth question. Because if the process is a way of positioning yourself, right? If you have a collaborative office like ours, it's both method and philosophy at the same time. So you don't make any huge differentiation between how you work and how you get to the results. That is your position. So the design methodology could, for instance, be described as transpositioning, which we use actively, which means you take a series of professionals around the table and you sort of force them away from their profession, from their specialization. They can think freely and they don't have to defend their basic knowledge. Of course, when they turn back and have to perform, they go back to their specialization. But in the process, you generate sort of different positions from different people, which don't necessarily have to defend their specialization or being afraid of making mistakes. You know, because so many mistakes throughout history that have been decisive for the development of our world. So again, I think the method of design is based on what we call transpositioning. That is a continuous dialogue between analog processes and digital processes. We are talking today about analog, which is everything you do with your hands. The next one would be analog digital, which is what you do with your hands and you scan it or otherwise read it into the computer and give it mathematical values. The next one would be digital analog. Everything you create in the computer is then being 3D plotted or 3D printed or CNC'd, which then gives you an object. And then you have digital, which is whatever stays in the computer, like films or animations. And our process is a continuous changing of position of these ways of looking at the relationship between analog and digital. That's why we have such a huge workshop. That's why we do a lot of things actually with our hands, but it's also why everyone has a computer and knows the 3D programs. You cannot leave one out, you need both. So I think that would be our position when it comes to this. But then we have also a series of methods that we work after. For instance, what we call liberating laughter, humor. Yes, humor and laughing is an extremely important design element. And as you move into positions of releasing yourself from normal perception of what you think you can do, and when you generate humor, then you release intelligently the resources you have as a person. So there are methods of how to deal with these type of things. And I think for us, is trying to generate more and more part elements of seeing things, combining things, and using knowledge-based intuition, where you say, I know about this and I know about that, but when I combine them, that's when something new happens. So this is approximately, I think, where we would locate ourselves. In addition, of course, there's a series of physical relationships, contextual landscapes, where Norwegians, we like, you know, mountains and fjords, and inspiration is being drawn from many, many places. But most importantly is society, again, and I'm coming back to that, because even if it's contextual, it's still a tool. It has a reason. If it doesn't have a reason, don't do it. You know, then it doesn't make sense. Architecture is and has become a commodity in many aspects. It's something for some people to make a lot of money out of. But in effect, social economies are depending on much more than the developers that actually make money on these buildings, because it's basically our cities. So our responsibility is slightly different and does not only belong to the client. And some clients understand this and some don't. I think that's, in general terms, approximately what how I would have put it also tomorrow.